Recording in progress.
All right, we're going to call to order. It is a special meeting of the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority due to scheduling. Today, Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. And first item on the agenda is the roll call.
Okay. Ward Howenstein,
Present.
Kelly,
Here.
Carson,
Here.
John Doyle,
Here.
Francie,
Here.
Allison,
Present.
Peter.
Here.
All right, we will move to public comment. I don't see anybody online or in the room. So not having any public comment, we will close that and move to Board of Directors comments. And there's no one online, so we'll start with Peter.
Okay, thank you, Carson. Are we going to talk about Burlingame 3 separate? Or okay, so I'm understand there are issues with getting CO for Burlingame 3, and some community members have brought it to my attention, and I realize from correspondence that our APCHA's role, or I guess I want to be clear on what our role is, and if it only has to do with qualification of the sales and not delivery of units. Maybe this is another perception issue, but people look to APCHA board as the developers or responsible for delivering those units, and I'm concerned for those people that have been displaced. If there are any people displaced, I realize there may not be many people, but just as a show of support for those people, I think it's worth understanding for the board how many people are potentially displaced and how those people can be helped, because it looked like there were lotteries going back to mid-August or mid-September, and those people were expected to move in last week, this week, next week. And they're obviously not able to, and there's a whole shuffle of people moving out of APCHA units, planning to move into Burlingame 3 that are backlogged, and I realize that creates a lot of distress for people in the community, so I don't know what capacity the board has to help that situation, but would love to help if we can. Other issue or questions. Last meeting we talked about self-employed, and I followed up with a question of, it seemed like for staff this is self-employment takes up a disproportionate amount of time for qualifying people and verifying, and I was interested in finding out how many people are self-employed or declare self-employment in their qualification for both rental and ownership. And in email correspondence with Matthew, he indicated this is something that the board would need to have a consensus on as being important information to gather, because it's not readily available. I think it's worth finding out how many people are declaring self-employment, how big of an issue it is, or how common it is between rental and ownership. So I'd like to ask that the board consider we ask staff for help in quantifying that number. And then also how many employee-owned units there are. I noticed since we last met, the city bought one unit at the ABC and is going under contract on a 3-bedroom unit now, so that's 2 units. I heard today about an employer in town under contract on 2 other free market units. So I think it's worth knowing what the total universe of housing is for workers between APCHA and employee-owned units. Then going back to Burlingame 3, sorry. I was interested in getting more information on the profile of the applicants as well as the people that won units. Over 60% of the applicants were from deed restricted housing already. So I'm interested in how many people were actually pulling from Down Valley and pulling from people from housing that isn't deed restricted already. And I recognize that if people are moving from within APCHA housing into Burlingame 3, that those units are being freed up for potentially people outside the system, but I'd love more color on that. Another question, I heard that there's a second hearing officer in Grand Junction, and just wanted to get clarity on that. Last meeting we talked about hearing officer and what our current options are. And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Allison?
I couldn't tell from that announcement. Is it every BG3 unit that's affected?
I think so, yeah.
As far as I know, yeah.
Thank you. Beyond that, I'm going to save comments for our robust regulation discussion later today.
Thanks, Allison. Francie?
Yeah, I was really happy to speak a couple of weeks ago in favor of A and B's application to provide an employee housing with their new bank in Carbondale, which passed that night. So I think it's 16 units, and I think 4 are reserved, if I'm not mistaken, for free market, and then 12 are employee housing. And I went to speak at the town hall because I thought if we had more employers in the valley who made a move like that, a lot of our problems would be solved. So I was thrilled that Carbondale passed that. On another topic, I was really happy to see that APCHA is following the guidelines for being able to provide services for undocumented workers, I guess. And that, so I'm assuming that means APCHA housing will be available for undocumented people, which I think is a very solid step forward. I've been working for the last week with the Venezuelans in Carbondale, and, you know, finding housing for them is, I don't know how it's gonna happen, but they're wonderful people. I took them dinner 3 nights over the weekend and really got to know some of them on a fairly superficial level. My Spanish is about 70%, so I don't get it all by any means, but it was a really good time spending time with them. I think I'm going to go back this weekend, and so if anybody wants to help with the Venezuelans, let me know, and I'll tell you how to get in touch with the person who can help set you up. But in the meantime, housing for them is intimidating, to say the least.
Thanks, Francie. John?
No comments tonight, thanks.
Ward?
BG3, for me, it's been a disappointment in the delay of delivery for over a year. I think that this is hopefully going to be solved quickly, and I understand it's just some electrical inspections and that have to be done. I think I made clear to Peter Furnell, who brought this up, to my knowledge, that APCHA really has nothing to do with this, that it's a city. So I think that APCHA's hands are clean on this. It's unfortunate, and I think we all regret it, and we just want to get people in there as soon as possible.
Thanks, Ward. Kelly?
Thank you. Let's see, I have a few things. I'm writing my notes so I don't forget. There is a housing forum being hosted by the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition on November 30th at the 3rd Street Center. I will forward you all the invitation and draft agenda. They have really endeavored to do a deep data dive on the housing needs for the valley. And again, this coalition stems from Aspen to Parachute, of which City of Aspen and the county are originating and funding and continuing members, along with other governmental entities and some other folks from the community. And so I'm really interested in hearing what that's going to look like. It goes beyond what a standard kind of housing needs assessment looks at, and they'll be presenting that information on the 30th. And I think when they have a report, I will share that out when I get it. So we'd love to share that morning with you all if you wish to go. It's from 8:30 to noon at the 3rd Street Center, and there is an invite that I'll send along. Regarding Peter's request, I would support a better understanding the numbers of self-employed employees that we have qualifying for the program or attempting to qualify. You know, we're making some policy decisions today about sending this on to public hearing or not related to qualifications for that type of employment. So I do think it would be merited to include in the next conversation. Regarding BG3, I have some questions that maybe are more related to the city, but I do have some for APCHA. So, for example, I'm just curious that if, because this was modular housing, that the state inspection process was, you know, if they got brought in because it's modular housing as opposed to stick-built. I don't need to know the answer to that now. Related to APCHA, though, I would like us to speak a little bit to a few things. One, maybe some affirmation that our standards rules continue to apply for sellers and buyers as we are contracting these units. Because as we all, you know, this sort of came to my attention because I have neighbors who are trying to move in and showed me their inspection reports. And some of the things in those inspection reports kind of line up with what our inspection resolution language says. You know, so looking at non-brand new construction, you know, we wouldn't facilitate a purchase to go through if inspection resolution didn't take place on a number of items related to livability and life safety, right? So I just want to affirm that that is the case here as well, because I do think that it becomes an important touch point for folks who are looking to buy these units to have the confidence that they're going to be supported if some items come out in their individual inspections that are not that need to be resolved. So that would be one question I have. I don't know if you want to take that now.
I think
and
it's
then
more of
have
a
one other.
punch list to follow up with the city than it is. I mean, we still do the home inspection, but my understanding is that there's a pretty robust clearing off the punch list process with the BG3. You know, so for the smaller things, not the CO, for example.
So
Sure.
Kelly, I talked to Sarah on specifically on the same kind of
Right.
an issue because I had I'm selling my house and the
Right.
buyers of my house were sort of telling me the same thing, and Sarah made it very clear that it is very much the intention to follow through anything on an inspection report. The city, you know, absolutely plans to address and deliver these units as new units. I think from some of the conversations that I've had around Burlingame 3, you know, a lot of these issues were caused by the fact that they were modular units. It was, my understanding is one of the things that needs to be changed was something that was already certified, inspected previously, and then has sort of showed up, and so it's, you know, uncertain, was the inspection missed or wrong, or was it changed along the way and nobody knew? So, but you know, that's my understanding is that the city absolutely plans to.
Good. I just
address
would
all those
like
items.
APCHA's staff to
Yeah.
have the backing of our board that we expect that items would not be
Right.
overlooked, you know, because it's new construction or because the city or the county or, you know, whoever is the developer on it. You know, this is a way that we interface and protect the community, and I think it's really important that we affirm that and, you know, reaffirm that as these things have come to light.
Can I ask while we're on this, is the Does APCHA choose when to do the lotteries?
I was gonna ask a related question too.
We set up a schedule in the spring with the city. That was a tremendous amount of work to do. So we did not have the luxury of waiting until the CO was completed. I saw that letter from a community member saying that it was completely stupid that we didn't wait till there was a CO. That would have resulted in a huge delay in people actually moving in, because we had a tremendous amount of work to get qualifications done and then run. I think we did 10 or more lotteries? So we worked very hard over the summer to qualify the people and to run the lotteries. So any kind of linkage, it may seem silly that we're running the lottery before the CO, but that would have resulted in a 4 to 6 month delay in people moving in. So we did the best we can based on the available information, but it was really a lot of work, and and I can't understate how much work it was this summer to run the qualifications and the lotteries for BG3. So the sequencing did get out of whack, and that is a shame, but we did the best we could based on the available information. And I do not believe that we had the option of waiting until there was a CO.
That is what we normally do.
Yeah, I did want to clarify that, because I believe
We
that's
do
what was
normally
done
do it
in,
that way.
in Burlingame
BG
too,
one
and
we did
with
not.
Basalt Vista and all,
But with
any recent
74
construction.
units coming online,
Well, and I think it's easy. I mean, being where we are today and looking at it today, I think it's very easy to sort of to criticize and say they should have waited until the CO was issued. I think everybody in this room knows housing is an incredibly important issue, and I think the intent from the city, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the intent was to get people in as quickly as possible, right? And that's sort of no good deed goes unpunished. But my understanding is they're working through the issues just as quickly as they can. Obviously, they have to be re-inspected. But again, this was my understanding of sort of I think there were 3 issues. 2 were documentation issues, and 1 was an actual physical change that needed to be made. That one change had already been inspected and certified at the factory, right? So this is completely unexpected. I mean, this is something that had sort of the box has already been checked as inspected, and then it shows up in the final inspection. So it's unfortunate, but I think everyone has the best intentions for trying to get people in housing as quickly as possible.
Well, and it's not that unusual. I mean, if if you're on the free market and you're buying in a brand new subdivision, you've bought your property
Right.
long before it's
And the
CO is issued.
The timing is super unfortunate. If we'd known about this while we were waiting for the windows to be replaced, for instance, then we wouldn't be held up for more months.
Which is a whole nother separate issue, right? All the windows in
Right.
Burlingame 3 had to be replaced
Why?
because they were defective.
They were defective.
They
Right.
leaked.
And there was a
They
lawsuit.
leaked the
because
actual windows. It wasn't the installation of the windows, it was the
Right.
actual window itself.
Who's the manufacturer, do you know?
I don't
know
recall.
off the top of my head.
Well, I
But
know-
it was separate from the
Contractor.
from the modular company.
Yeah.
Like they bought the windows from a third party, and the
Gotcha.
windows were defective.
Yeah, I think they were installed incorrectly. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Ugh.
It was a big holdup.
It was, again, a big disappointment in that there had been a leakage test done in Idaho, Boise, Idaho, where these units were built.
Right.
And when they got on site, they leaked. And we, over a year ago, had to make a decision to let people move in and fix the windows after they were in, or to hold up
Right.
delivery of the units until the windows were right. And we chose to have a quality, livable unit when they moved in.
Also tied to what happened at Burlingame 2, right, with construction defects. We didn't want to repeat that mistake.
Jeez.
And to the question if it's stick-built or modular, I don't know. I want to find out because there's a big lumberyard project coming up. It was presented and has been presented that you get better quality control and the product faster with modular, but you go with what you have at the time, and it's been a big disappointment for me, and I'm sure for John and the rest of us that have been involved in this for years. And I've asked to get a number of people to try to figure out, to your question, how many people are affected. That we're trying to work that out, and how holding up closings.
Yeah, and we've been working very hard on rearranging closings and working to accommodate people, which is, and we only have Pam who has that role, so it's been a lot of stress and work with her, but we're working very closely with the city to work from our point of view and our workflow to get that done as quickly as possible and help the clients as best we can.
But either the city or APCHA is finding out, did people give up a lease with the expectation of moving in and now are without?
I don't know of anybody who's been displaced right now. Nobody. We've been up on this from the very beginning. Pam said, now wait, do not give your notice yet. We've got a list of people at Truscott. We know they haven't given, we don't want them to give their notice yet. We'll wait. So Pam has really been up on all this
Okay.
and has kept up on this. So as far as I know, nobody's been displaced yet.
Yeah, and kudos to Pam. I mean, she has been working really, really hard on all the contracts, all the extensions. So, Kelly, any other comments?
No. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, with regard to Berlin Game 3, our communications plan that we've talked about. So I've been working with Carolyn on just sort of working to put together sort of an op-ed and sort of starting off with just kind of an introduction to APCHA. But I certainly think that there's room within that to potentially have something on what APCHA doesn't do, right? Because there are a lot of people who think APCHA is the developer, this is APCHA's fault, and while APCHA is certainly involved in the qualification, APCHA is not the developer, right? So I think even amongst the community, people who have lived here a long time, there's still not clarity about who does what. So I think that there is opportunity for us to continue doing that, and that's something I'll continue to work with Carolyn on.
Is that from you, Carson, or from the board?
So I think we had thought it would be from me. I'm happy to circulate individually before we send it out. If you want to look at it, it's not going to be anything controversial. It's going to be pretty straightforward about what we're trying to do. Right? It's really just an explanation, and I've sort of written the first draft of the first one, and that's really what it is. It's kind of an introduction about how many units. I think, Peter, to your point, when you came on the board, how many are managed by APCHA that we control the tenants, and how many are we just qualifying the owners on? I think that there's room for education amongst the community, just to sort of explain a little bit about what's going on, because it is complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. So just continue to work with Carolyn on that.
There's going to be more than a letter, though, right? Isn't it? Like kind of an ongoing campaign?
Oh, yeah. It's so, the first one, like I said, is I sort of, it's just kind of an introduction about, the numbers, the units within the system, how APCHA was established, how we're governed, the IGA, et cetera. I certainly think, given Berlin Game 3, there's opportunity for the next one to be what doesn't APCHA do, and development. I mean, we have the right to develop, but we don't develop, right? And so, I think that there's room to kind of lay all that out and put it out there. We could have it as after it's out there, linked on the website, where you could sort of easily read some of the some of the background. So, again, none of that's going to be sent without having review from certainly staff, and it's not going to be anything controversial. It's just going to be very straightforward.
I guess I ask if it was from all of us or not, because then it does sound like there's still an opportunity, as Kelly mentioned, for the board, or just a notice on the website or something, to at least provide that empathy reaction to this, We have 76 families going through this, like that we understand the frustrations and are working very closely to make sure no one's out on the street, and that it's like we are going to hold the city to the same accountability as we would hold any individual. And I think this is a great time to have that collective, I guess, not just saying like, well, it's not us, but like, and we feel for you, you
Right.
know? So if that can either be incorporated in the thing that's going out first,
And-
or if there's room for that from us on the website or from staff on the website.
No, I think it's a great opportunity to own it and show some empathy.
Right. And I think, I mean, as far as who it comes from, I mean, I'm sort of indifferent if it's from me or from the board. I think it's easier if it comes from one person and you're not trying to share a document amongst 9 people or,
Yeah, I think this would be outside of the rollout that
Right.
you're doing. And is there a block on the website or something that, like a statement made available by the board? How, I don't know how we would do that.
We'll figure it out.
What, I'm sorry?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
yeah. And this is not a one shot deal. It's part of the conversation we had with Carolyn and the comms department going forward. And I think the fact that we had the BG3 press release written by Carolyn, she did another one today on
I saw that.
keeping the essential repairs grant program. This is the first of many interactions which we're going to be having with the community.
Like if we had a Twitter or something, or like I would say just throw it on that. Like, hey, we understand
Right.
this is unfortunate and we feel for the families that are going through this. We don't have that. If we could make I don't know if we've ever used Facebook as just a statement, like a casual conversation before, or
Yeah.
just we do the videos or we do the events. So that would be an opportunity as well. But having not had that, what a good practice opportunity.
Okay, so the self-employed, we've got that coming up during the regulations. I'll save that. And then the hearing officer in Grand Junction. So we do have a hearing officer and an alternate, and we can choose either or. And
Yeah, I'll mention it now. Yeah, we are in touch with the alternate hearing officer, and we are looking for the right or even the next opportunity to use him to develop that. He's based in Denver. We just had a hearing officer, what we call them, judgment, come back much more promptly, which you guys might be seeing in the next couple of months. But we haven't had too many new ones, but we are looking to use the alternative hearing officer as soon as we get a chance to build the bench, so to speak. And
Right,
he's
and
out of Denver.
I don't have any further comments, so I'll turn it, executive director's comments, turn it back over to Matthew.
Great, thanks everyone. Let's see, Peter, under the APCHA umbrella, we have 218 employer units under APCHA.
Under APCHA.
Yes.
So there are employer units that are outside APCHA, obviously.
Yeah. And then I just want to talk a little bit about self-employed, getting that data. And then Peter, I know you asked about where the winners were living. So as Home Track has been developed, we have made a very conscious effort to limit the amount of information we collect, which is just a good privacy practice. And we use Home Track for qualifications. So we try to limit the amount of information we gather on individual so we can apply APCHA regulations in terms of qualifications. So the field is about if they are qualified, if they are employed full-time. So we don't have a field for where they're qualified. And this has popped up a few times during my time here. So to actually get that information, that would be a manual pull from whatever segment we were looking at. And again, we're only getting that information on the owner's side when they buy the unit, and so that wouldn't be relevant any time after that. So it's really a snapshot in time. For the rentals, we look at the people every 2 years, and again, we will look at their information on their W-2s and stuff to see if they're qualified, but where they're working is kind of secondary to our our flow, and so we're not really, so that will be harder than you'd think to get that information, and would be a very different way of us using the information than we have been in the future. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but it needs a different discussion, more robust discussion than just in comments here, because we are really just using HomeTrack as a qualification tool to see if people are working full-time in Pitkin County. We're not tracking in any way where they're working in HomeTrack. So it's buried, it's there in their W-2s, but that information may not be updated, and certainly in the case of ownership, that was just merely when they bought it.
So we don't have a way to sort of say, like, a checklist of taxes, W-2, or taxes, 1099?
We have that, yeah. I mean, that's in their case file. They would have their W-2s or whatever financial information, but it's not on the surface, as a searchable field. And I think that was a fairly deliberate decision to use HomeTrack as a qualification tool and keep, I think that's a best practice, is to just collect the minimum amount of data you need to achieve the goal.
Can we have a robust discussion on this? Like, can we put it on an agenda to talk about HomeTrack?
Sure.
And specifically for Burlingame 3, what comes to mind is we always hear that 60% of our workforce commutes into the Upper Valley or up to the Upper Valley for work. And when we deliver 74 units, I'd love to see that we're making a dent in that. And so we can say, and I think the newspaper article even pointed to this, saying, people are moving up into these units that haven't lived in the Upper Valley. And I was just wondering if we could quantify that. And I imagine Pam, who knows where all these people that aren't being displaced, where they're living currently, would probably know offhand out of
So
the
that would be it would be at this point, that would be a manual pull of all the winners and pulling up their addresses manually and seeing where they're coming
74?
from. Yeah. So I don't know if, like I said on email to you, Peter, I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's a day's worth of work for an APCHA staff member. I don't know if that's 2 days. I don't know if that's 3 days. But that's a considerable amount of work. So I just want to make sure we know why we're doing it and what we're going to do with that. And if it's just, if that kind of data is accessible from Department of Commerce, Bureau of Labor Statistics, through other means, that might be a better way to do it. So I just want to be cautious about what we're trying to do with that data.
Again, I think it's a PR opportunity to say, 25 of the 74 new owners have moved from down valley and aren't going to be commuting as much. We're accomplishing the goal of housing more of our workforce in the Upper Valley.
We'll have that.
Discussion.
I wonder if
when Pam does the closing, we find out where the people prior were. So once these are closed, we can provide you with whether they were tenants and whether they were or owners or where they came
If
from.
they rented deed restricted, owned deed restricted, rented free market, owned free market, we can't tell you.
So that's
where.
probably the better way to
We can
do
tell
it
you
as of the
that.
time of closing. So
I think the only sort of, I guess, just sort of the only thought that complicates all of this, obviously, is as these units open up and somebody who is in employee housing sells theirs and then somebody else buys, and then if that person was in employee housing, and then where did that person who bought the one, right? It complicates it because it's not just as simple as who moved into Burlingame 3, right? Because the people who are already in employee housing are also selling a unit, right? So it could be that some of those units get occupied by people from down valley.
okay, well, why don't, as we close these units, we'll try and track that and get back to you.
Wonderful.
And then, let's do that.
And we can have this HomeTrack discussion another time.
Yeah. Andrew, who told me he was watching. He's we had a staff meeting last week, and I'm just reminding him, he's gonna be writing a paper on the future of HomeTrack, because there's we've tried various different ways, and so we can have a whole HomeTrack discussion, but he's looking at what the next kind of steps are. So Peter, you weren't on the board last year, but we did have a contract signed to improve the community-facing side of the HomeTrack portal using existing money. that process did not go well, and we pulled the plug about a year ago because it just wasn't working out well with the vendor. So we are aware that there's considerable updates that we need to do for Home Track, and Andrew's putting on his thinking cap and seeing the best way to do that. And we think we are stuck with Salesforce for the foreseeable future, but he's also going to be doing some blue sky strategic thinking on what to do in the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, I'm going to carry on.
I guess I would just comment on that. I know, just chew it over, everybody. Like I know for us, our comm dev department just went through a contract with a consulting group to help look at business process updates and workflow. And it just triggered my thought for APCHA, because they're very similar, right? Like, people coming in, applying for.
Love to hear from them.
So great. I did sort of put a plug with them. Like, I'd love to get their feedback on it, but maybe some direct, project manager conversation with you all to be thinking about what they thought through, what they got out of it, what they think the deliverables for the community are on trying to really make that process, which is technical, is complicated, and requires a very good community interface to really deliver services well. So I'd be happy to set that up.
That'd be great. Thank you, Kelly.
And we went through that when Home Track went into play. So
Yeah.
when we started, within
Months
the
and
past
months and
5
months of
years,
that.
we spent a long time going through that process. But that
Sure.
doesn't mean we can't do it again.
Yeah, it just seems like it would, like, now that there's a system in place, like, how is it delivering? How can it be improved would be helpful to review.
And I mean, I'm happy to jump into on those discussions. I mean, I've got a few sort of points I think that could be easily corrected that would make it much more user-friendly, and that I wouldn't think would be hard to change.
You can send us an email on those. That would be great, because
Yeah.
we're looking at things right now.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Great, thank you guys. Okay, and then I just wanted to highlight our continued and future, even more deep cooperation with CORE. They've been involved with the Essential Grants Repair Program. I had coffee with John Doherty this morning, and Cindy, you all know Cindy, the other Cindy, whose name escapes me. She used to
Rubin?
work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she's over at CORE as well. And CORE won a $100,000 grant from the Department of Energy very recently. We were part of that. We wrote a support letter, and we are going to help them spend that money on upgrades. And so we'll be looking for opportunities in the new year for that. And that's going to be an ongoing effort. And so I look forward to much more work with CORE in the months and years to come. We also had our first sit down with property managers and qualifications specialists on the, I don't want to call it public customer service training. I don't want to call it that. The public interaction training with Scott Bowman, who's worked closely with the City of Aspen Parks Department for nearly a decade. So we sat down with him for 2 hours last week. We did a lot of big idea thinking, and he's going to be coming back with us very soon on some ideas to move that process forward. And we look forward to hopefully a long, productive relationship with him as we look to improve our interaction with customers, and also customers' interaction with us.
Yeah.
Question on that.
Yeah.
When staff gets a phone call, do they record that call?
No.
I think that it might be worthwhile to say, this call
Yeah.
is being recorded so people behave themselves.
I don't think that'll help.
It may not
I don't
help.
think that'll help.
It may not help, but at least you have it documented.
Well, we were talking with Scott, initially about flow charts and standard responses to inquiries. So, there's a lot of stuff we can do, and that can be part of it.
A code of conduct.
Right.
A
That
code
came
of
up.
conduct and a recorded phone call would
That came up as well. So
go a long way.
we'll be working on
Code of
that.
conduct for
Everybody.
people answering the phone?
Well, for everyone.
Yeah.
For the applicants and for staff of this is how we're going to behave, and the call is being recorded, and everybody knows it's being recorded. Everyone has agreed to the code of conduct. I think that's going to solve a lot of problems.
Is there a code of conduct for how
No.
Yeah, okay.
And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is, you remember we've had over the years a contract with an outside PR consulting firm, Slate. We've had a very good relationship with those over the years. We are not renewing that contract in January. We are going to be leaning very heavily on our esteemed colleagues over there, Carolyn, and then also folding in whenever necessary, whenever they want to, Pitkin County comms as well. So we're moving things in-house. Slate have been great, and they're being very professional in the handover, and we look forward to a smooth transition. So thank you. I just wanted to let you guys know that, and I think that's all I've got.
Matthew, can you speak about the APCHA budget hearing with council?
I will. It's on the agenda next week. Next time I'll be doing it for you, but John and Ward had me up there for over an hour, which was entirely too long. But I think I spoke particularly about our Compass Plan, which is the internal City of Aspen strategy and rewards program. So we went through that on our own internal goals, and then I spoke about the new position, which will be working on HOAs and community engagement, and then I went through some of our asks for capital budget improvements, such as the Truscott water flow. Like the Truscott buildings, the bankment is such that all the water flows into the building. So we want to find a way to go out of the buildings. And then also laundry upgrades, Truscott, and I will give you the full briefing next week.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Next meeting.
Well, those are the main things I hit.
Okay, thanks.
Was there anything in particular you were?
Well, I guess I know we're going to also see the budget, but it feels pretty impotent, obviously, by the time it gets to us.
Right.
So I would love to understand any major themes or concerns or anything coming from that type of conversation prior. I get just so that when I see it, I have that.
I don't recall any particular points of controversy. There was the city council and then also the Board of County Commissioners before them. They had some great questions about the new position we're building out. But in the end, everybody said that was a great idea, but developing relationships with HOAs, which I think everybody is in favor of. And there was some technical questions about building improvements. And then I was talking also about community engagement in general.
Great.
Yeah. Does that reflect? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recall there being any real issues from the council.
Can I ask two quick? Can I make my plug for moving the compliance report to the front of the web
I'm
page?
sorry, that is on our list, but it hasn't happened
I
yet.
know the last report's from beginning of October, so I don't know how often they get
That
updated.
is on our list, and I apologize that hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
And is the RFP for the HOA?
That is
reserve study?
live. We've had a meeting. We've had a pre-bid meeting on it. There was one company that came to the pre-bid meeting, and they're coming back to us with questions and concerns. And I think we for staff, have a better understanding of what we want out of it, which is a actionable, distinct, doable process to help the HOAs, as opposed to a everything model. We're paying for this, so this is not the end, this is the beginning of the process for HOAs. So if we're paying for it, under no circumstances this can be everything they need to do, but it's a good first step. And that came out very clearly with this company, because they kept talking about things which we could add on, and we're like, wait, that's not what we're doing right here, because APCHA is paying for it on behalf of the HOA, so it needs to be doable from our point of view and give them lots of options to take the conversation further, and if they want to investigate other things.
Can I just ask one more question on that? So we talked about this, that the HOAs themselves may need help in understanding the reserve studies, so that the consultant that's asking where they are in standing, they're getting accurate information. How is that working?
Well, that would be the consultant would be undertaking that process and explaining what was going on.
They
Yeah.
have to have a contact person with each HOA.
Yeah.
And I would also, I mean, I don't know if it's like add-ons, but I would say that if there is within that the ability to perhaps build in a follow-up meeting with the inspector, like so that the HOA could have their own meeting to follow up with the inspector and ask some of those questions. If there's ability to build something like that in, I think that would be valuable.
I think we
that's
I think we talked about that idea.
There's
Yeah.
some requirements for follow-up with
Great.
each of the HOA contacts, yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, signing up, notifications, available rental sale units, Cindy?
Just again, rentals, we do have some available. People need to get on our website to do that. Right now, we do not have any ownership or any resales for units. We just, with some people who have won a Burlingame, until we know where that process is going, we've kind of put a hold on that, so that we don't have, so poor Pam doesn't have to keep doing amend extends for absolutely everything. So, but we will have more units coming up, I would say within the next few months, so sign up for notifications.
And if you see Pam,
Never.
give her a
Yeah.
hug. Yeah.
I
Don't give
can't-
her a bad time.
Can't understate that enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please give Pam a hug.
Great. Okay, we will move to the consent calendar. We have one item. It's the minutes of the October 18th, 2023 regular meeting. Are there any amendments or discussion or a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Motion from Kelly,
I'll second.
second from Ward. Any discussion on these? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Ward,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Okay, Kelly?
Sorry, can I backtrack for a moment, please?
Sure.
One quick question. I noticed that we don't have a report out from our retreat this summer. And I wonder if John Doherty was going to prepare one for us.
Let me
I don't
check.
need an answer now, but it would be great. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you.
we are going to move to a grant program update from Liz.
City.
So, just being respectful of the late start and Kelly and Francie having been here all day, do want to keep this just a quick, short update so that we can have, so that we're not rushed on
Yeah,
the
and
on the
we do plan on
regulations.
coming back to you guys with policy suggestions and
Yeah.
tweaks later on. So this is not the time for that. We really do want to keep this just an update on how things are going now.
Yes. I mean, do I have to go sooner? I mean, do I have to start sooner? We should look at the transcripts. There we go. Just like listen. Okay. Yeah, so as Matthew said, today is really just a summary of applications that we have received so far, especially since the program is actually still underway. There's still available funding, we're still accepting applications and still reviewing applications. And so we're just going to do an overview of where we're seeing applications from, and then also a recap of how many we've accepted versus denied, and the types of repairs we received, and just overview of that. And you're welcome to ask questions, but I will try to keep it brief as an update of here's where we're at in the program right now. So far we've received 45 applications. This is as of last week. Within the 45 applications, this included about 89 repair requests because several applicants put in requests for several different repairs within their unit. And this isn't included in my report today, but this week, since I compiled this, we have received 4 more applications since then as well. So people are still submitting. And along with this, applications by property, I mean, we've received applications from across a spectrum of properties in the inventory. And I mean, it's been pretty balanced, but just to give you an idea of where we have received the most from. So I combined Burlingame 1 and 2. We received 3 from each of them. And then Aspen Highlands Village and Williams Woods, we received 4 from each of those. And then the rest of those properties listed, it's just a couple from each. And this does include all approved and denied applications as well. So this first part, I just put them all together before we split those apart. Then the category of applicants that we've received so far. And so this is their category requalification, not the category of their original unit. So as you see, 19 of them were unverified, just meaning that they never turned in their requalification forms, which means we obviously can't approve a grant for them if they haven't done that. Otherwise, we received the most from category 2 and 3. And a lot of them were around the same category as their original unit. We received a few category 4 owners. All of them were originally in category 1 through 3 units, though. They just didn't realize that they were now category 4 income when they applied.
And they don't qualify for?
Sorry, what was that?
For?
Yeah.
They don't qualify.
Yeah, so they don't qualify for the program because they're now category 4 income.
Yeah.
So that's the 19.
19 is the unverified.
3 is the category.
Sorry
4.
if the colors are a little
So
funky.
the 19 people, they did not in their application say what their category is?
They didn't submit their requalification forms. So that means that since we didn't receive their last year's W-2s or tax returns, so that means we couldn't verify what their current category is.
And so those were obviously denied?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Now, the types of repairs requested. So I grouped these into categories just to give you an idea. We're receiving the most requests for window replacements. And then in second, flooring repairs, just flooring coming apart. And then third is furnace and boiler. And again, this includes just all the repair requests that we've received, not the approved repair requests. So for example, like counters, those wouldn't be approved. But we did receive a few requests for counter replacements. So approved applications. So we were able to approve 14 applications within this 17 different repairs. This came out to around an estimated $91,000 of grant funding. And this was on average around $6,500 per applicant. And most of these repairs that we approved are for windows. And then we have the list of everything else that we've approved as well. And I do want to emphasize this is estimated because we did decide that we would be sending grant funding after they do the repair. So it's going to be based off the final repair cost. And along with this, some of these people that are approved still have a few dependent variables. They need to send us a repair quote so we know exactly what they're doing before we guarantee funding. And a couple people in this category also need to update their deed restrictions still. So, yeah, they're just going through that process still. So,
what's an emergency floor or a safety issue with the floor?
Well, it's not emergency, but it's like flooring splintering coming apart. So it's hazardous to walk on. Or one example is someone who their flooring is starting to have gaps and they're in a wheelchair, so it's hard for them to move around their unit. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
I noticed there was like 14 applications for flooring, and I had a similar question. It's how essential flooring was, but
We were surprised. We didn't expect flooring to pop up at all,
Yeah.
but it did, and some people's floors are in very bad shape. So yeah, we were surprised by that as well.
Yeah. And obviously there was 14 in the submitted, 2 approved. So ones that weren't approved were either, which I'll get into a little bit, we just didn't have enough information because they just wrote like flooring, and we need more info before we can approve that type of repair, or they didn't turn in their requalification paperwork, or there's other instances. We received a very wide variety of applications, so yeah.
I think these are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice
I mean,
to see this happening.
We've seen the problems that can happen with windows, obviously water leaks, roof water, mold remediation. I mean, this is exactly what this program is for.
I'm so glad we're doing this program.
Yep.
So now I'll go into why we've been denying applications. So we've, since this, all 17 of those in additional review have also been moved into the denied category, actually, just because it's gotten to the point where if you haven't turned in your requalification paperwork or we don't have enough information on your repair, try again. Submit another application and we will review it. Otherwise, other applications just denied because they're over in category. They're in an RO unit, which we excluded from the program. We received a few HOA repairs. A couple people weren't APCHA owners, so obviously we couldn't approve that. But
We didn't expect that.
That was
we were like, who is this?
So I think, sort of forgotten what the parameters were. So we just do this until the money runs out?
That's where now we're at in the program. We originally set the 2-week window, so then that way we could close and prioritize applications if needed. But now that we know that there's still about 3/4 of the funding left, estimated, we can accept applications on a rolling basis and
I see.
go from there.
Great, thanks.
What does over in category mean?
Oh, that means that they're like category 4. I should have said like over in income, but so they just didn't qualify.
More of a comment. I guess I'm thinking through our RO exclusion a little bit because I know there's a lot of need in like Lazy Glen.
Those were where all the RO units that applied were from.
Yeah, so that's tricky because they may be RO, but their incomes are low.
Well, if 3/4 of the
Just something to
funds are
think
still
through.
available, maybe we should adjust that to make it available.
We'll have that conversation
Yeah.
later.
I don't wanna-
Yeah.
And
I know.
we'll get to that. So, I mean, why don't I just go there now? Next steps where we're at in the program. So we are continuing to accept and process applications. Carolyn just sent out a press release to let everyone know we're still doing this. And we're also just doing tweaks as needed, especially anything to help applicants have a more successful application, as evidenced by how many people we had to deny because we didn't have enough information about their repair. So that just is, now we're requiring, especially because there's no time limit, a repair quote along with your application, just so then you have they have a solid understanding what the repair is, and so do we. And we know it's an essential repair when we have an estimate too, because you can see what the repair is, what it's fixing. And then, as we just said now, probably early 2024 is the goal to come back and talk about policy changes versus those administrative changes. And that'll just be based off once we have just a better scope of how the program is going. We'll have more applications that have been received, hopefully repairs that will have been made, because right now, obviously no funding has been sent out yet, no repairs have been made yet. And so right now it's just still really early, and that way we have a better understanding what the need is for the program before we make any policy changes. Yeah.
Has there been anything that's jumped out to you, like the 8-window repair applications? If most of them were in one HOA, does it signal to you that maybe that HOA needs to accumulate reserves to address their windows?
Mm-hmm. I would say actually with windows, they were from everywhere.
Okay.
And a lot of the time it was just old units that need new windows.
How old?
I have to go look. But we do,
Yeah,
I have been
because-
keeping track of when owners purchased, but also we could look at what year those properties were built as well.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting data point for me.
I mean, I'll tell you just anecdotally that my place built in 1990, the windows are in bad need of replacement, and I was told that they were, and I won't pretend to understand, but I guess being at altitude, there's a different window requirement, and that these windows were sort of designed for lower altitudes and just not, I mean, you can put your hand up, you can feel the air blowing through.
Are they double pane?
No.
But I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to improve my windows via my HOA, right? Like that, it would be
Well,
considered common.
So it did.
It depends, yeah.
Depends on the HOA.
Talk to you about that later.
So do you think in a month, like you don't think it's even worth switching the RO portion of this sooner?
I mean,
We only have 2 meetings.
I think it's better if we probably just address all the policy changes that we want to make. And I mean, I don't really foresee like us being out of funding by early winter, in the winter either. So I mean, I have let anyone know that if we have policy changes that make them qualify, we will resend them the application. So.
Okay. I'm just thinking of other pilot programs where the people who wanted to take advantage, we've finally had to come and, implore us over public comment. If there's 3 people sitting there right now who qualify in every respect except for that one thing that we could change.
I think maybe it is better to do it in this one rollout so that way it doesn't feel like we're just changing guidelines under people either. So.
I suspect that as we go into winter and get snow, we'll also have more
Yeah.
leak requests.
That lead time was so quick to find out about the program, get anyone to show up to your house to give you a quote and get that all together while having a full time. I think you will get more now that it's a more realistic way of addressing these issues. That's
I still think what a success. I mean,
Yeah.
a quarter of the funding spent in less than a month. Like, that's need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it indicate to you anything else, like the response that we've gotten in terms of there's a lot more units than we expected that are in disrepair, that need essential repairs, or, hey, our housing inventory's been kept up in ownership, it's pretty good?
I mean, it's hard to say right now still, I think. Especially we didn't have a clear expectation of what we were going to receive.
Right.
We didn't know where or how much, what repairs. And so, I mean, it's just been enlightening, I think, to go through these. And I think we're going to keep learning as we're going. And especially once we start revamping the application to help people with how they're describing their repairs, I think that will help the program a lot as well.
I think I know the answer to this, but is there any grant money available for windows replacements? I think CORE is no longer doing that, but to combine this with maybe some grants on windows.
You mean like with CORE or?
Well, I think CORE no longer has a rebate for windows or grants, but if they're asking to have windows, and that's the highest incident is for windows. You know, if
CORE
there's any
doesn't have rebates for windows? Upgraded windows?
They did in the past, but
I don't know if they do anymore. but
I
know
don't think they
used to.
do.
I mean, we have approved
It's weird.
8 different applications that requested window replacements. So all the ones with windows that weren't improved, it was either just not enough information or not verified or things in that realm.
And I would if you're on the current deed restriction and you replace your windows and that counts as an energy efficiency item, that does not count against your 10% capital improvement cap.
No, but they're not allowed to double stack what we give them.
Right.
Yeah, on this one.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's taking a little while.
We will move to the first reading on resolution number 8, amendments to regulations. Bethany, are you going to take this?
I'm happy to facilitate it if you are okay with that. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We will move through this hopefully quickly, but understanding that there's going to be lots of discussion, but love to get through it all this evening. As we mentioned in the memo, there are a fair number of grammatical changes throughout the regulations that we are not discussing during this meeting. Those do not change the substance or anything else besides cleaning up grammar and making regulations a little bit cleaner. I'm happy to talk about those if any of you have a question on some of them. What we will be talking about are the changes to the regs that do make a change. And Karen's gonna bring up a PowerPoint like I did last time for you. Potentially, if not, I'm gonna start though while she's doing that. The first one Francie brought up during her comments, which is receiving a public benefit. Colorado state law did change, and we would like to put that into our regulations and follow the state law. As Francie basically said, that you don't have to be lawfully present in the, yes. It says October, but it should be November, but that's okay. That's my fault for not changing it. Karen, can you just go to the next slide, please? So basically, APCHA is going to put into play this new provision that is state law that says that you do not have to be lawfully present in the U.S. to receive state or local public benefit. Does anyone have any questions on this?
But there are going to be portions of our program where we're still requiring the Colorado license, right?
We will still require the Colorado license.
However, you can get a Colorado license. It's got a black stripe on it that says it's identification purposes.
That's proving
or an
identity.
ID.
Great. I think it's actually a later section, but I had a question just about how, if to prove, like, if we allow J1s or HB1s, people who are here on work visas, to apply for the program, and how that works with their, what do they show?
They show a passport and a visa for seasonal housing is what we see our J1s most often in.
Okay.
And we have a ton of them that are in our program.
And
But
so
they're not eligible to buy.
To buy. Or non-seasonal housing, are they Truscott, Centennial, could they get into those?
Most of them are not here that
No,
long.
they're not here.
They're
Currently,
only
no.
here during the winter, seasonally.
Okay.
On that, though, I did want to,
Yeah.
so I had forwarded correspondence from someone who's been here for years working on a TN visa. They would become qualified.
They would be now.
Yes.
Yes.
They are, under the
After
new
the
change, they
change,
would
yeah,
be. But
okay.
currently, they are not, because that has to be renewed every 2 years at an embassy or consulate overseas. That's the NAFTA visa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same as legal permanent residence, even though you are here legally.
Okay, thank you. So they would, I mean, they could enter a lottery, buy, potentially have to sell if they don't get their visa renewed.
Correct,
Yeah.
and that's historically why we have not allowed them entry into the sales side of it, because if their visa is not extended, they have to leave. And then it's a struggle to get the unit. But it would be up to, if they were to win a lottery, it would be up to a bank to whether they were to issue a mortgage or not. So we don't control, obviously, that fact. So
Right.
someone might win the lottery and they might not get a mortgage, but it could happen to anyone.
That's
so.
right. Well, I appreciate this change, and our board does as well.
Great. Next slide, please. Okay, I think this is the one that might have some fun. Karen, I'm not sure if you can make this any bigger at all.
If you click on that little, so go down to just to the left of there, the one that looks like a cup, immediately to the left of the Zoom bar. Right there.
Is that better? Awesome. Okay, so we listened to a lot of what you all said last time and have cleaned up this based upon feedback provided during the October meeting. So eligibility, you have to work full-time, 1,500 hours per year in Pitkin County. And each member of the household whose income is used to determine compliance with the income limitations must meet these employment requirements. So 75% of your income must be earned in Pitkin County. If you're a W-2, it's for all three of them. So 75% of your income earned must be in Pitkin County. We specify a little bit in employer located outside Pitkin County or self-employed that the goods and services must be provided to Pitkin County residents, businesses, or operational institutions. Yes.
I just wanted to throw this out there for everyone's information. Don't mean to change anything, but at last month's CAS meeting in VIII, I learned that VIII requires 1,560 hours for their housing. Just for everyone's information.
Was there anything scientific about that number for them?
52 weeks a year at 30 hours a week.
That keys us
Kelly?
up.
Yeah. I got to thinking, I'm wondering, when we look at 75% of income, is it 75% of income for 2,080 hours of employment? Like, I'm thinking, what if somebody's, I work as a bartender for my 2,080 hours or my 1,500 hours, but I also do art on the side. And I make 30% of my income from art, but I work overtime to reach that. How does that get calculated?
So it's your combined income. So, for example, also if you were to receive royalties or
Social Security.
Social Security or trust, maybe not trust money, that's a bad one, but dividends. All of that money is rolled up when we go to calculate your 75% income in Pitkin County.
Yeah,
So, like if you were to get $25,000 in dividends, but you were to only make $10,000 in Pitkin County, for example, you don't hit the 75% in Pitkin
Even if
County.
I'm working
Even if you're
those
working,
hours.
because $20,000 is coming in dividends from, you're just sitting on,
You don't get to say, please only consider this income.
yeah.
It's you as a person, not.
What's the benefit to the community for that rule?
It's very hard for us to look at what someone does in Pitkin County versus outside of Pitkin County. So this is an easier way in a qualification standpoint to look at income. We need to be consistent with all of our applicants. And if we're all of a sudden trying to figure out what are they doing inside Pitkin County versus outside Pitkin County, what's the value to it? Is it art? Is it receiving dividends? 75% has always been a rule. So it's just, this looks different, but we've always used the 75% threshold. Last meeting, we suggested we increase it to 90% if the employer was located outside of Pitkin County. But 75% is always what we've done. At some point, we need to be consistent and make it as, I don't want to say as easy as possible, but we need easy rules for qualifications to follow so that we're not
Clear rules.
clear. Thank you.
And these would be, it's the individual's income, not the business income.
Correct.
Well, what are you thinking? That a business has a lot of income from outside the area, and yet they pay the employee in Pitkin County?
I'm just thinking, I mean, you could have, I would say any entity that operates outside of Pitkin County. I just was clarifying that it's the individual's income and not the actual business's income.
So if somebody worked for a bank, they live in Pitkin County and they worked in Carbondale at the A&B bank there, does that qualify them?
They wouldn't qualify.
No.
Because
They wouldn't
they are not
No.
working in Pitkin
Okay.
County.
What I'm saying is, like, in that instance, like, you wouldn't, I don't want to confuse
Yeah.
anyone.
And I have to bring up something with regards to this and the 1,500 hours, because I realize that the board said that if somebody makes the 1,500 hours within the first 6 months, they don't have to work the rest of the year. I started with the Housing Authority in 1992. There's 2 off seasons. There's an off season starting in the end of April through June, to the beginning of June, and there's an off season basically in September, October, and most of November. People had to work in the winter, in the summer. You couldn't just work in the summer or in the winter, the 1,500 hours, and then just say, oh, I worked my 1,500 hours, now I don't have to work. What you guys told us last time is, oh, that's okay. That's okay if somebody makes all their 1,500 hours in 6 months in the winter and doesn't have to work anymore. They have to live in their place 9 months out of the year. That's going to be impossible for us to watch over. Are they really in that property 9 months out of the year? So I just wanted to bring that up because this is a recommendation that you are going against what APCHA is recommending.
Staff.
Or staff. We will follow whatever you wanted us to do, but I had to bring that up.
Where does that say that?
Last time we had
It's
it in
that
here.
it doesn't say that.
Yes, it doesn't.
Because we took it out.
We took it out because you all did not want
Winter, summer?
I forget the wording we used, but it was winter, summer, essentially. Document employees, document work in both seasons, basically.
So are you saying there are instances, staff finds, where people are doing that, where they're
People,
making?
have tried to tell us they work all 1,500 hours over the course of a winter, which basically means you're working every day, 6 hours a day on the hill, for example, and then you're going to a 4 to 5 hour nightly shift at a restaurant every day from.
It's like 75 hours a week.
It's 75 hours a week, essentially. And so, I mean, I guess someone could technically do that, 75 hours every week from November through March.
So
And
why don't
then
we put the
qualify.
language back in? It seems like, what was the harm in the language in the first place being in there?
Well, I mean, if they meet 1,500 hours, are we really gonna spend time tracking down when they earn that $1,500? I mean, hours?
We have to confirm through qualification that they meet that 1,500 hours, and so it.
But then if they did do it all in 5 months or whatever, 6 months, and then they just wanna watch TV for 3 months and then go travel or something, why is that a problem?
It's hard from a qualification standpoint if someone shows us as self-employed, for example. If they're self-employed, if they say they work 1,500
Yeah.
hours, it's very hard for
I
us
could see that.
to determine whether they do or they don't if we can't say, we need to see that you're doing something in the summer as well. Or, a school teacher doesn't work in the summer, but they work September through, or August through June, so.
I mean, I don't think it's a, like, I think your question, why is it a problem? I don't think it's a problem. I think the question is that something that should be subsidized, right? I mean, we have limited housing. We clearly have a housing need. My personal opinion is I think having a year-round resident to me is more valuable than somebody who works 6 months and then leaves and goes somewhere else.
Well, they can only be gone for 3 months.
3 months, but.
And if the 3 months absence from the property is not jibing up as well with the working, that makes it harder for us.
It's also hard if someone were to qualify, let's say in the summer, they're not working potentially, but they're just telling us all of their work happens in the winter. So they're applying and they're not showing work.
And most of this is self-employed.
We do have some employees probably of Aspen Skiing Company and a restaurant that could try to get the 1,500. It's a little bit easier for us to document those hours because they're on the paychecks.
I think the other thing too is you've sort of disincentivized people from working. If I can work my 1,500 hours, I can get my category 1, 2 unit. There's no incentive for me to work in the other season.
Well, they're living at a pretty poor level, so the incentive would be to make more money. I mean,
You would
would
think,
think.
wouldn't you? But that is not unfortunately, that is not the case. We have people who ask us, what little can I make?
Right.
And
Where's my threshold where I can still stay here and not do anything else?
I'd love to know if they're in the restaurant
It's amazing, some of the
industry.
stories that we hear,
And
honestly.
we have traditionally applied full-time to mean somewhat year-round, as well as the 1,500. So including the summer-winter language was an attempt to codify that. So if we don't have summer-winter language, that is a change.
I'm in favor of keeping keeping the winter-summer language.
I
I know it's
philosophically don't like
yeah.
to regulate based on our presumed worst actors. And to me, if you can prove 1,500 hours, I mean, the process of verifying 1,500 hours should be the same. Did you do it or did you not do it, right? And so to me, I guess if we find it valuable for someone to be putting in 1,500 hours in the community, when they do it, I think it's so unrealistic and impractical that you're ever going to get your job again if you leave it for 6 months, that you're ever going to afford, like you said. Like, I think we're really just, it feels like retaliatory or something to me. I mean, I know it feels unnecessary because I think we're getting the benefit that we want, and we can't guess every situation. And so why make it more strict? in that
We're not
way?
making it more strict, right? We're making it more lenient. We're taking that out of the, it's in the current regulations,
So
right?
I like what we have here, right?
Okay.
Can we have Tom weigh in? Just
Tom,
We can't hear you.
He's not muted, so I'm not sure why he's not.
Tommy, can you hear me?
Tom, you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
yeah, we can't hear you, Tom.
We're assuming you can hear us.
can you call
He needs to turn his volume up.
Tom? I think we need to buy Tom a new computer.
We just
Is he gonna call?
He's gonna call.
What is he gonna call?
Who's he calling?
There's a number with Zoom. Yeah, and so he'll be here in just a sec. Hypothetically.
No, he won't. His voice will be.
Valid point.
He
Toward.
doesn't have a mic directly connected to his computer because we had this. This was last meeting too. He had to call in.
But didn't we just turn up the volume on the TV?
No, he had to call in. And he
I
still had the-
think we should have her
Like
head
we,
down to
literally-
Tom's
we
office.
just had a meeting and
I know.
everything was fine
Yeah,
on
I
Zoom.
already know
So
that.
Bethany, can I ask?
I wonder if that's a rotary
I'm not
dial
sure.
phone.
Bethany, can I ask while we're waiting, how often does this come up on initial qualification versus requalification for renters?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I have a great answer for you. I would see. I'd say we see it like not fairly often, but a handful.
We have people who will work here all winter long, and then they'll go to Martha's Vineyard for the whole summer. But they've worked probably enough.
What do
Yeah.
they do with their place here?
They
So it's empty.
they could illegally be renting it out. They could be, who knows what they're doing. They could be leaving it empty, who knows? All I know is that there's a lot, everybody would like to live up here. We just don't have the resources to do it. The city only has a certain amount of money to build any more housing. The
And-
county doesn't seem,
With you.
the county's not doing a lot of it either, so,
If somebody's gone for 3 months, can't they rent it out to an actual qualified renter?
yes. But they have to ask us.
They have to
They have
ask
to
us.
take leave of absence, and they have to, the person has to qualify.
Right.
And you know, the language we had in there before took into account the idea that a school teacher doesn't need to document summer employment because they have those 2 to 3 months off, but they're working the rest of the year. So there are certain roles that, you know, it's not your traditional on mountain job in winter and summer. But
So how come, is he calling the number and we're not seeing it? We don't know what's happening with Tom.
call him on this thing.
Should
I
just
don't
call him
know,
on the
I don't know
cell
what
phone?
it is.
he should just normally be able to call directly into Zoom and we would be able to hear him. So he's struggling with that. I'm happy to try to move on and then we can come back.
He's,
It's up
he's
to
on
you,
the phone right now.
Carson.
He's got to dial.
Why can't he just talk? I mean, usually video's harder than
I
talking.
don't know why.
That's weird.
Okay, we can come back to Tom.
I think
Any,
our volume is just
any
down.
other,
Is it my computer volume's down?
I don't think so.
We had this literally last meeting with Tom, and he called in, and it was very much. I think it's his computer. He just doesn't have any microphone. Is my best guess.
Why is the phone not working now?
See,
It
when-
looks like he's just trying to talk into the computer. And I'm not sure.
Hey, Tom.
Can you put
Hi,
it up to the mic?
it tells me that the password I'm trying to enter here is
Can you
invalid,
hear him?
so
Well, yeah,
I haven't been able
invalid
to
if we're
connect
looking at it.
Okay, why don't you? I've got you on speaker, so why don't you just go ahead now?
To your microphone.
Okay, two comments on this issue. One, if you're gonna go to the seasonal requirement, you're gonna have to address
I'll turn off his
the
volume.
breakdown of that.
Tom, turn off the speaker on your computer.
Did he mute it?
That's gonna mean he can't hear us.
It says I'm muted,
Okay.
but it's not working right.
Okay, you're okay.
You can still hear it. You can still hear it.
It's echoing here, but if it's not echoing for you, that's fine. So what I said was if you're going to have seasonal work requirements, then you got to specify how that breaks down. Because if all you do is say you have to work both winter and summer, what if you just work 20 hours in the summer? So that's a problem. The other thing I'm concerned about is that as written, it says work full time 1,500 hours. Either that's redundant or you have to define what it means to work full time. Because it says by having both phrases in there, there's an implication that work full time is something else.
Good points.
Yep.
So I'm not sure. In my experience, I think they mean the same thing. So if that's the case, you can leave off work full time.
Full-time work is defined in the APCHA regulations. It's someone who works at least 1,500 hours per year within Pitkin County, and earn at least 75% of their income within Pitkin County. Full-time work requires that the person must work for an employer or Pitkin County employer as defined by these regulations.
All right, so both of those say the same thing.
You could remove full-time.
We can remove full-time.
Yeah, I either remove the 1,500 hours or remove the work full-time. Because you've got it all here.
I just think 1,500 is so much more precise than full-time. It's not open to interpretation, so if we're gonna remove one or the other.
We can remove full-time for next time.
Okay, I'm gonna hang up on Tom.
Yes.
Anything?
No,
Okay.
just mute him.
Okay.
And if
So
he raises
the
his
only
hand
other
again.
comment I have here is that it says about the 75% requirement. It's the same for located outside Pitkin County and as self-employed.
I can fix that.
But for located in Pitkin County, it says must be earned in Pitkin County, which is stated differently, and I don't know if it means something different or not.
It's not stated differently.
We did look at these, by the way.
Yeah.
He did approve these.
Karen, can you just have the slide be the main thing again? Thank you so
Okay,
much.
Tom. Okay, Tom, thanks. We're gonna hang up on you from this line. Thank you.
We'll call him.
All I can say is I'll continue to listen in, but I'm not going to try to comment. And if you have a question for me, buzz me, okay?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
All right. Right. Bye.
Maybe Tom can come on the 13th.
Alone on my computer.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to decide on where is everyone on.
Well, I guess when I reviewed this with our board, I was reviewing it under the initially proposed, the initially proposed thing from APCHA. And I mean, I don't know, I guess we didn't talk specifically about it with our board before we came here, so I can check in again before second reading. My understanding is the goal here, and the reason staff has brought this to us, is to try and tighten up the regulations and actually better serve the community by really assuring that people who are winning housing are working in the community full-time. Is what I understand the goal to be. I do think people who work 1,500 hours in a winter are contributing to the community. I think they're probably not living a very healthy, well-balanced life. I have been that person who has worked the 75 hours a week and get it, and it's not sustainable. So I'm okay to accept this as initially proposed, but we can. I should go check in again with my board since there's so much contention, I think, here about it.
Thanks, Kelly.
To be clear, it was written in, that's the way it is currently.
This is proposed verbiage.
Okay.
75% is, most of this is basically in there right now. It's just cleaning it up. It's just making it a little bit more clear, really outlining remote workers and workers who work less don't qualify. There's really not anything changing.
And there's so many ways to catch people cheating in other parts of the regulations, I think, that we're getting at in this language that were covered regardless.
Well, this language doesn't actually address working all seasons.
Right.
No, it doesn't.
So
Right.
we don't need to talk about that, do we? I mean,
Well, it did last meeting,
Staff is
right?
recommending
Yeah.
that we add that, and board
Well,
had
that
said
we keep it, right?
Yeah.
that
yeah,
we-
it's
yes.
not in here.
Yeah.
And
It's
there's-
not in this one, it was in the
Right.
previous.
We just wanted to flag that that's a
Right.
change.
Just identifying that it is a change, yeah.
We remember, yeah.
So, Ward, what are your thoughts?
I'm good with it the way it's in our packet on page 32.
Okay.
Just striking full-time and just
Yeah.
leaving
Great.
1,500 hours.
So that's, one question I did have on this is, what is the difference in an employer located in Pitkin County and an employer located outside Pitkin County? Is that brick and mortar?
It's brick and mortar. Yeah, it also could be a liquor salesman. Employer located outside Pitkin County could also be the W-2s coming from outside Pitkin County, but it's like working for the Marriott. It's just the W-2s
So,
just
but in
coming
that,
from
in that
Georgia.
instance, so Marriott has a location in Pitkin County, but they are an employer located outside
Outside of
Pitkin
Pitkin
County. Okay, it might be, I don't know. It might be helpful to clarify that.
Okay.
I think Kelly has a really interesting point too, that if you are, like, that first sentence is our top tier gold, like, you should work 1,500 hours for a Pitkin County employer. And if you do that, and then also do other things that bump that income, that salary, to 70% of your income instead of 75. Again, like, what are we losing or sacrificing by not allowing that person to be eligible for the local housing?
Just for example, I'm changing facts, but we see people that might make $21,000 working in Pitkin County, and $75,000 is coming from businesses that are operating outside of Pitkin County. $20,000 is coming from dividends, and so they might not be category 1, which is what Pitkin County employment would show. All of a sudden, maybe they're category 4, but they're bringing in, let's say, $95,000 from outside Pitkin County, and so it's those folks necessarily that we're, I guess, saying shouldn't, under current regs, aren't allowed in, and we're saying shouldn't be allowed in moving forward.
1,500 hours a year, full-time in Pitkin County, they earn $20,000. Like, that's where it starts, like, you start to just think everyone's lying, right? Like, we have some other provisions where we're like, wait a minute, minimum wage is such and such. Like,
minimum wage means you have to make $20,000 basically.
Okay.
So it's minimum wage, but yeah, are they lying? We
Right.
don't have a good way to
yeah.
determine, but they're they're living here great. They're working 1,500 hours, but they own businesses outside of Pitkin County. They're getting dividends from all these investments. Is that necessarily, like, are they just living here because they want to be and are taking the minimum wage job so that they can live in Pitkin County, but all of their kind of financial things are outside of Pitkin County?
I mean, live and work. I mean, since that's our top tier, right? They are working. I'm thinking of like a restaurant group or something where you're actually making most of your money if you own a restaurant group, including one in Aspen, and then open a new one in Denver and New York City. Do we not want you, Jimmy, like here operating Jimmy's just because you're also earning lots of money else? I totally get it for the low end, and I hadn't been thinking of that. I'm thinking of like legitimate salaried employees or owners who are doing things elsewhere. Is that the kind of thing we don't want in our community anymore?
I think the problem is we need one rule for everyone, so we can't cherry pick. Okay, if you are a high earner, it's okay, but if you're a low earner, you're not okay.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as Cindy said, we don't have housing for everyone, so we have to cut We have to make a rule and we have to draw our line in the sand. Now, it's up to you all to make that rule, and to tell us where it's drawn. This is how we have been operating with the 75%, and
Yeah.
I mean, we think it should be at least 75%.
You do a really good job of explaining why there have to be some rules. You're very clear about that. It's very helpful to hear it.
No,
because
thank you.
I don't like to restrict people's lives and what they can and can't
Yeah.
do, but you're very clear.
Okay, just want to keep us, we're on number 2
yeah.
of 11, so I don't want us to get, bogged
This is
down.
probably the
and-
biggest one, though.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. It's something I'm definitely going to think about between now and voting on it properly, I suppose. And I guess trying to just get some more examples I just hadn't thought of that might, just be harmed accidentally. Remote workers, what if you are employed by a local business that allows you to work remotely? Are you saying that is not, you are not allowed in the system? And like how, I guess also how would APCHA know? So like, I don't know, architecture office here, but they kind of don't care where, if you like work from home, if you work from your grandparents' house a couple months a year, the business and all their earnings are local. What is that? Is that what remote workers is
You need to
speaking
physically be in Pitkin County to do your job to qualify. That's what we've always gone back on. It's in the definition section. So if you have to physically be in Pitkin County to do your job, then you qualify. So
Then you guys, I mean,
I don't think
that-
it's not the scenario you're talking about.
I mean, Pitkin County currently employs people who live in Grand Junction.
yes,
right.
yeah.
I mean, most people,
And,
I would say, who
mean,
work for
we
the
employ
government
them,
don't
but
have to
they
be here.
clearly don't have to live in Pitkin County. So would that person qualify?
But once they qualify, they're gonna live in Pitkin County. I mean,
I would think that if that person in Grand Junction found a place to live here, they would probably not be working remotely anymore and actually be going into the office to work.
exactly.
So I think it's a little bit different because with the city as well, the city still allows people to work remotely. The city is physically within Pitkin County. That to me is different. The Board of County Commission, or the Pitkin County building is in Pitkin County. If you work for Pitkin County, if you're working remotely, you're still working for Pitkin County.
So you qualify.
Yeah.
So you qualify.
But Allison's example of an
Absolutely.
architect, you can have an architect's office here, and
Well, and that's right, because we do have some architects who most of their jobs have been within Pitkin County. Once in a while, they might have worked for somebody who, they built a house for them here, and now he's got a house in Nantucket that he wants them to build, so they're working here. It's something that they're still working most of the time within Pitkin County, and you have to look at it that way.
And the business is still paying into the tax base.
So it's the physical business that we're
Yeah.
more concerned
Yeah.
about as to where the office employee sits
Yes.
when they clock in that day.
Although with the case of the Marriott, do you want them working at the Marriott here?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
for
Right.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And why would they want, if they're working at Marriott in Hawaii, they're sure not in hell gonna
Exactly.
want a house here.
Right.
That's a long commute.
That's a long commute.
Any other thoughts on this?
So then is remote workers redundant in that sentence? I don't know. Because
I interpreted the remote worker as somebody who lives in Pitkin County, but they're working remotely at the trade center in Chicago.
Exactly.
That's what I thought
Exactly.
it meant.
So then they
And that's it, they would not
That's-
qualify.
Exactly.
That's-
I just wonder
They
if
would not
we
qualify.
should say,
So that-
is not providing goods and services to.
Which
Pitkin
is one of the things that's in our regulations. You have to be providing goods and services
Right,
within
that's
Pitkin
exactly
County.
it.
but bullet point number 1 takes care of her scenario.
I think the language is pretty clear, actually.
I think you get it with the second bullet point, employer located outside Pitkin County, and then the remote workers.
We'll do some wordsmithing and see what we can do. See if we need to change anything.
and next hearing, if you can come back with more examples of why you wanted that language in there, I think it'd
We
be
just want to make
helpful.
it very, very clear.
Yeah.
There's been a perception in the media over the past couple of years that people can work for Google or Microsoft or the traders in Chicago, and because
qualify.
they can qualify, and they can't. So we're really clarifying that we're not changing anything. We're just clarifying that people working remotely for somebody with nothing to do with Pitkin County cannot live in APCHA.
Work full-time,
Just go
1,500
back.
hours per calendar year, and for Pitkin County employers, our very first sentence.
Yeah.
Like it,
So it is a belt and suspenders, Allison, but
Okay.
we felt that was necessary to really drive home that point that you can't do that.
okay.
And you're right, it is both, but we really wanted to make that clear.
I hate to say this, but I did have a question on another one, which is the one where it says a member of your household can't own property in the OEZ. What is a member of your household? I mean,
It's whoever you're submitting the application packet with or a spouse. So
it's not parents or
it's not
something.
parents.
Okay.
Okay. Are we good to
Can
try
we
to
move
move
on?
on?
I
Oh,
was
Kelly.
surprised that we didn't bring any discussion forward on the E OEZ.
We brought it forward last year and no
I
one
thought
had
so,
any
too.
interest in changing it, so we did not bring it back.
What did you bring forward last year?
Expanding the ownership exclusion zone to a larger area, potentially the state of Colorado, or I think that was the suggestion, or at least a few more of the counties. And that was not well received, with the idea that that is one way that people can build wealth. It's more secure than the stock market, and so allowing people to buy real estate is a way to allow them to grow financially. And so it was not.
I guess, how do you differentiate between somebody who lives in APCHA housing and owns $2 million in real estate in Denver and somebody that has $2 million in an investment account? I mean, how do you differentiate between those two?
Well, how are they qualifying?
Well,
They
they
have 2 million in-
qualified when they moved in.
Well, let's,
Right, and so this only applies to ownership,
So-
because people in rental wouldn't
That's right.
be able to
Yeah.
That's
qualify.
right.
Correct.
but if you want to have an easy conversation, we can, but
Yeah,
let's
thank
not do
you.
it now.
No, I don't want to.
I don't want to.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Okay, the next slide, continuing obligation to keep APCHA informed. This shouldn't necessarily have much. We reworded this section, so, we would really like people to let us know if they have changes in household or updating email addresses, telephone numbers, mailing addresses. Certainly employment. A lot of this is, hey, if you lose a job, we're not going to kick you out of your housing right away, but talk to us. Let us know what's happening. So the idea that, we're open, we want to communicate, we want to help you. Our whole goal is to keep people in compliance. It's not to force you out of the program. And the other is that, we can request documentation to determine compliance with regs and the deed restrictions. Now, this isn't, a new section, it's just been reworded, which is why it's in here and it's in a solid paragraph instead of kind of coming from different parts in the regs. Any questions?
This is for another time, another discussion, but I would like to have it at some point. But obligation to remain qualified, to me, applies more to renters than owners. And I think I am concerned about how equitable it is between ownership and renters. And I think that people should be, feel safe staying in rental. And I know of one example of somebody that's been in rental housing for 20 years and the kids move out. Now that she has to downsize, had she bought a unit, she would have been fine. Like, she would have been incentivized to downsize. Instead, now she's being forced to downsize. So because she is obligated to remain qualified being a renter, she's penalized versus being an owner.
We can have that discussion.
Awesome.
From the rental perspective, the regulations were changed 2 years ago to address the empty bedrooms, and so requesting that people downsize when their children from rental leave. So,
Yeah.
but we can bring it back.
Does everybody want us to bring that back?
Say that again?
Rental situations. In rental situations, if somebody is, if their household size has changed and it's less, we give them a certain length of time, but they do have to move to the smaller unit. Peter would like us to readdress this. We would like to know if the rest of the board, if the majority of the board would also like us to readdress this.
Today or in the future?
No, in the future. Not today.
I mean, I would be curious. I mean, I don't know how you solve that without. I don't know how you solve that without. Intentionally. Right. I mean, I agree they're treated differently, but I don't know how you. I don't know how you solve that without. And I mean, by doing that, you're intentionally right. We've got a right sizing program right now to try and correct that problem in the ownership units, and then that would seemingly be creating that problem in the rental units.
I think it's just being consistent. I mean, if we have a right sizing program for rental housing, somebody's grandfathered in, if they qualified with 2 kids, 3 kids, and they have a 3-bedroom unit, and then in their rental, and they can't afford a down payment to get into ownership, or they don't win the lottery, then they're being forced to downsize, whereas in ownership, we're trying to create an incentive.
I'm happy to have the discussion if other people would like.
I think we've listed a couple things today that I would put ahead of that, but I'm also happy to have that conversation.
Okay.
Employment sounded different than the rest of the information-related changes. I absolutely understand and agree with we need to be able to always get a hold of you, so contact information. And I thought maybe employment was part of that, like we could go to the job if we're having a hard time getting in touch with someone, but I think you will hear, I know this is kind of in there, we talked about this last time, you're never going to go after someone for this. This would be part of other things, like, hey, it was on you to tell us this. But for the seasonal nature of our town, each time someone changes a job, it's a lot of extra communication. I haven't done it in my various jobs. I feel guilty about it now because I realize maybe that would have helped, but I don't know why, like exactly why employment. It does seem so scary to lose a job and a house all in one fell swoop, and I'm afraid people are going to feel that that's what's happening, that they're ratting themselves out of a house somehow. And I think until there's more trust maybe built, that one just either won't be complied with very much, or it will be the scariest for people.
I will say that we have a shortage of workers, so anybody that loses a job, hopefully will be able to find temporary employment.
Like
or
will not be unemployed for long.
Yeah.
Do we really still have a shortage of workers? Isn't that changing?
We really
I agree it is, and it'd be great to get data on. Anecdotally, I've heard restaurants are like fully employed. And
yeah, my restaurant has people asking for jobs all the time.
It'll be interesting to see with the new Molly coming online,
Yeah.
and there's some new projects coming up. We'll see how that pans out.
Okay. Can we move forward?
Thai restaurant.
I'm good with this as
Okay.
is.
Great. Let's move forward. Let's see what happens next time. Okay, verification documents. This section is changing because of the receiving a public benefit section under Colorado state law. We are changing what has to be presented to us because we used to talk about, what could and could not. So we will take a valid Colorado driver's license, one that has a black line on it that says not valid for federal identification, voting, or public benefit. Passports, you are required to provide us with a Colorado driver's license for sales. It is Colorado state law that you must get a driver's license or a state ID if you're in the state for more than, I think, 30 days. But we do not require that for, obviously, seasonal rentals. Even though maybe they should be getting a Colorado driver's license, they don't. Most of them are just here for a quick period of time. So this is just being brought in line with state law. Any questions? Okay. Moving on. Income calculation. This was wordsmithed a little bit after last meeting. So in the absence of other information, APCHA will determine that a person's annual income is equal to at least Colorado minimum wage multiplied by 1,500 hours. This really comes into play when we're talking about a self-employed individual and what is provided to us. We talk a little bit about adjusted income in here, which is already in the APCHA regs, and how we arrive at adjusted income for a self-employed individual. Both of those sections are currently in the APCHA regs, but we're pulling them all together in one spot. So they're all here so that you can see them as a group. Does anyone have any questions on this?
Questions on this?
When you add back in those items, is that increasing people's categories generally?
Yes.
Or decreasing? Okay. I thought of another instance on that minimum wage math. Peter, you might be able to help me with this. What about like real estate agents, people who get massive commissions every 3 years? And so I don't know that their income looks like they made minimum wage for $1,500. Like I was trying to think of other situations where if we use that math, we might be miscalculating actually how much work they did that year.
Like under calculating or over calculating?
Under calculating?
Well, I guess, so if someone were to bring in $1 million, are you saying from a real estate sale?
If they're like, I made $5,000 this year, I worked 1,500 hours. You're like, the math does not add up. No, you didn't. And they're like, I was able to live on that because last year on my 6% on my $80 million house sale, like that's just the nature of the job. Some years are really dry, but I did show the house. I showed houses every week. I did all the things. I had yeah, I guess big commission-based professions was the one that I thought might not have the numbers add up on that situation.
I don't think we've seen a problem.
We have never seen a problem with that. We see a problem with this normally when you have your server or your bartender that's telling us they made $10,000 and really it's that they made $10,000 in cash that's under their mattress, and they refile their tax returns and show us the correct amount. We also see this with mostly self-employed individuals who show us they made $10 last year, and we're like, no, that's not. Either you did not work or something's going on. And so this is really a base for us to say, like, look, you have to show us something to show that you've actually, it's not a perfect solution, but it's the best solution that we can come up with, and it's what we loosely use in the office right now to qualify people to figure out if they've gotten to 1,500 hours, because if not, it's chicken scratch in a notebook telling us what they've done or haven't done. Not everyone, but there's a significant number of self-employed individuals that do not keep great books. And we're trying to memorialize something to help us.
There's no requirement if you're self-employed to pay yourself the minimum wage.
No, you don't have to pay yourself anything. But the business would show it at least.
Yeah, ideally. Yeah. So it does seem like there's quite a few things that we need to look at for self-employment that makes the regulations very hard for them specifically, and we have to just make some choices.
What people can provide us when you're self-employed.
I think the reason that the regulations are more difficult for self-employment is that that's where you see the majority of the fraud.
Exactly. So I think we should, like, a section that is self-employment, like.
We have one.
We have that.
It's in there as to what they need to provide us and what they need to do. But a lot of what we've been asking for with this and this documented summer and winter employment is to address those folks, because it's self-employed is really easy to give us a chicken scratch notebook and tell us you're working 1,500 hours a year. And some of those folks certainly are. Some of those folks probably are. So what we've been trying to do is beef up as much as we can. So, and I hate designing a regulation for like those one or two offs, but at the same time, our qualification staff need something to stand behind because they get yelled at on a daily basis. So.
I would say, the intention is not to exclude anyone who is working 1,500 hours, and staff is very good about if somebody is self-employed and they are working it and there's an initial decline, staff is very good about taking, provide us more information and working to get towards that qualification.
Well, I would just hate to have something in the regulations where it's like, but sometimes we'll get around it if need be. So like, But I think we're protected in this in the absence of other information. That's what you'll use.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I guess the scenario that comes up for me, which I think Rachel used to bring up a lot, was like averaging. You know, if somebody like had a real illness one year, but they like can demonstrate on average for 5 years they've worked 1,500 hours.
We have provisions for illness, but
Yeah.
you know.
We also have provisions for when somebody makes a lot one year and not that much the next year. If it's 20% different, we average.
It's a 2-year average.
So, because somebody, it's especially for somebody who gets a big bonus one year, but they haven't gotten a bonus in a while, we take that into consideration and we average it.
Right.
It's,
Okay,
this,
you're right. I
this
forgot
would be
about
very
this.
helpful in situations where you've had self-employed people reporting absurd amounts to the IRS, claiming that's their real income, when it's obviously not. Rather than us having to prove why it doesn't make sense, we can just refer to this and say this doesn't meet the baseline, because otherwise we spend dozens or hundreds of hours going back and forth with people who are declining to show us what's really happening. And that's a real frustration and headache for us. We've had people who are making cash money under the table, not reporting it. We have to use their IRS, the tax return, and they can't have 2 sets of books, and we tell them that, but they're not telling us what's really happening. And so this is a very low baseline, which gives us a efficient way to deal with those situations, rather than spending hundreds of hours going back and forth with these people who don't want to provide us the information.
Isn't it more common than not that people, I always hear people say, I make too much, you know, or the standards are too low, you know, too many people make too much money to live in APCHA housing. I hear that like at bartenders and people that.
I would like to have that conversation with them, because I don't think that's correct.
Okay.
But we are very much in favor of this very low base.
Sure.
Any more discussion? We good to move on?
I don't think that is on our packet on page 13.
Some of the page numbers are a little off.
My apologies if they are.
Well, I'm looking at the, you don't see it, do you?
What?
No.
Right. Just this about the minimum wage is not in.
Oh, the income calculation didn't make the memo?
No. Which is okay, we'll just add it for second reading.
22. This is here.
No, it didn't
Oh,
make
no,
the
you're
memo,
right, yeah,
apparently.
minimum, right?
Oh,
It's
okay.
not
Oh,
in
the
there.
memo. Oh, got it.
Okay, I will correct that. My apologies. The next is employer designated units. So staff recommended last time that if an employee was qualifying for an employer-owned unit and they were employed full-time by that employer, they didn't have to qualify at the category of the unit. This was because employers are struggling to put their own employees in their units because they're category 1 and 2 units and their employees are categories 3 or higher. Staff changed this based upon board conversation that this should only be in place for 1 year. So we put it until 2025, assuming these don't go into play until 2024. That the employer would have the allowance to put a employee of theirs in a unit that's at a different category and for 1 year.
And then we can come back and see how that's going and have a
Better discussion.
You guys were hesitant about doing it.
I'm supportive because thank you for sharing their 218 employee-owned units. That's less than 7% of our inventory. And I feel like owners don't have to requalify, so employers, I don't feel, should have to qualify who they're putting in the unit.
We have the Aspen School District who was lucky enough to get the property. You go around the corner, that was Poppy's Restaurant. And there's like a 4-bedroom there, they have different sizes of units. They try to put, it's hard for them to put a single teacher in with another single teacher. So they want to maximize the units, but it's still, if they have that need for a single person in a 2-bedroom unit during that period of time, they want that person in there. But a lot of times in a 2-bedroom, 2 teachers are overqualified. Even though they want to put 2 teachers in there, they can't because they're over the income. So that's just one example of an employer-owned project that they want to house their employees, but because of the category of the unit, they are unable to house as many as what they can. So that was another reason why we kind of brought this forward, because as long as it's an employer-owned unit, why should they not, and they're housing an employee of theirs, why not allow them to do that? As long as you're keeping the category rental rate, because then they can't just say, oh, I'm gonna just stick all category 4 people in here. That's not the intent. That's why to get more money from rent. That's why we said to keep the rental rate the same as what that category is.
And was the response last time that whatever allowed them to deed restrict those properties, it was with the intention of like the lowest income people living in them, and so that's why they have
It was
the
an affordable
exceptions.
housing credit program
Okay.
development, and they can get more money if it's a lower income. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of these properties out there that employers end up buying are part of that program, so the categories are lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the honoring and that's through the governments. That's not a citizen
Right.
member of APCHA board's opinion. I have no opinion on this, but I think that was the reasoning behind it, is because they got it with a specific purpose that now it seems like they're skirting. Of course, it's great that they're housing workforce and their own. Like you said, more employers. It would be great if they could. So I think, yeah, maybe 7%, but like how many humans who are earning Cat 3 or lower or something all of a sudden don't have access to those? Because the other choice would just be to rent it to people who don't work for you at that rate. They just don't want to because it's so precious. So let's hold on to it until we have an employee come. But they don't have to keep it empty. So I think that's why there was not just full-blown support for changing the provisions on these.
Yeah, I think this is, I mean, if the categories can't be rented to the employees of the owner, I feel like that is a problem that needs to be solved with the respective city or county that, negotiated that category through the land use process. I just don't feel like it's APCHA's position to totally strip the category requirements off of those properties.
And we've started talking to community development about this as of last month. So when they were, I don't want to put words in mouths, but there wasn't a huge red flag that was raised right away. So we'll keep.
I just have to keep saying this. It's not equitable between employee owner units and regular owner units, because regular owner units don't have to requalify, and the owners have to qualify their employees each time they put in an employee into their unit that they own. So the point of like, yes, the employer's buying a category 1 or 2 unit because that's what the developer chose to develop because they got the most money for the housing credits. I understand that, but in a scenario where it was a local moving into that category 1 or 2, as soon as they move in, they never have to requalify their income. So they're more than likely not staying at that category. So it's no different than an employer eventually putting in a category 3 or 4 income person into that unit.
Well, I think within those 216, right, the category 1s received a much higher subsidy than the category 4s. And so the people who have the category 4 paid a lot more for that category 4 than, the people who have the category 1 on average. And so I think if you were to just strip the requirement to requalify as a category 1, you talk about staying fair. I mean, that's not fair to the people who had the category 4 and received less of a subsidy up front through the land use process. And again, which is why I feel like this is something that the city and the county should address, right? And so maybe it's you own a category 1, you want to go to a category 4, you make up that gap and to the county, to the city, And then you get the, right, I don't want, that's up to the county and the city to decide, but I think that is the right way to do it versus us just granting across the board.
So
And I don't think it's unfair if that employer-owned units might seem to have an advantage, because one of the reasons that the employers invest in the property is in order to attract employees. And that's their right, you know. I mean, they put in all that money to provide that housing. They have the right to have get some advantage from that. And so it's different than, I think, people who end up in APCHA housing that's not employer-owned. It's a completely different picture, I think. So for them to be compared, I don't think it makes sense to really, they don't have to be exactly the same, is what I'm saying.
And isn't there also a subset of units that like aren't assigned a category anyway? Like I just think about some of Pitkin County units, like they're not, the units, we bought the unit, we've asked APCHA to manage the qualifications.
We qualify people, but there's no deed restriction on the unit.
Yeah.
And you guys look at the person's income, we say they're a
Set the
category 4,
rate
that's the
that
rental
way.
rate that you
Right,
charge
so that's,
them.
they're not
That's
gonna get
different.
captured
Yeah.
in
No.
this
No.
rule.
Oh, she's locked out.
But if, using the teacher example, if a teacher moves into the Poppy's property and they start making more than their category 1 or 2, they have to move out. The employer moves that person out because they no longer qualify. Whereas if that teacher were in ownership housing, APCHA housing, they wouldn't have to move out.
That's correct.
Correct.
And so that's where employers or the teacher is saying, I can't make more than this, otherwise I have to move out of my housing.
Or a bedroom sits empty
Or a bedroom sits empty.
because they can't put 2 teachers in the unit because it's over income.
I agree with you, Carson. If there's a way you could tell the school district, hey, the teacher's now making more than their category 1 or 2, the school district has to kick in to increase the category of that unit. Maybe that's what you do.
You mean by improving the unit?
No, just paying the higher category.
Oh.
In other words, they're gonna have to go to the Board of County Commissioners or City Council and request that development to be recategorized.
I see.
And whatever
And pay more
payment
money.
in lieu will have to be paid, they will end up having to come up with that number.
Either that or, yeah, I mean, as categories get redone and incomes go up, like we have to always look at that. So,
Do you
Okay.
define Pitkin County employer?
we do.
Great.
So, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little confused. Are we keeping this in with a 1-year allowance for them with the idea that staff is going to spend some time talking to community development with both the city and the county to look at whether, how this problem can be addressed? Because no one wants empty units.
Right.
So is that what the thought is?
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I think that's the
Okay,
intent, right?
great.
Is that we recognize it's a problem, we want to solve it in the short term, but not
Long term.
right.
Okay, great. Then Karen, I'm gonna have you slide ahead. So right sizing, so there was a request by the board to change the occupancy requirements for right sizing when you're downsizing. Staff recommended that it was occupancy -1, so that meant that if it was 1 person, they could go into a 2-bedroom, but 1 person could not downsize into a 3-bedroom, for example, out of
A
4-bedroom. The board last month in October just wanted to see a net bedroom gain. So that is how it's written. This means that someone that is a single person in a 4-bedroom unit could downsize to a 3-bedroom unit.
And that
And that-
again is against staff's recommendation.
But we will do what you all would like us to do and rewrite this reg.
So I think this is in response to the limited interest that we've seen in the right sizing program.
No, not this, because the people would have fit with the -1. The household who wanted to go from a three bedroom
Right.
It wanted to go to a 2-bedroom, and if the person was in a 4-bedroom, he would only have been allowed to go to a 2-bedroom because he's a single person. So no matter what, a single person can only go to a 2-bedroom unit. By this, a single person can go to a 3-bedroom unit.
Yes, because how the regs are currently written, that single person could only have gone to a 1-bedroom
One-bedroom.
unit.
But in order to do that, they would need to find a 4-bedroom or more unit with at least 4 or more people
Like a 1-bedroom
to
unit.
exchange with, right?
Yes, what we have right now is we have a number of folks that are in
To the gr-
2-bedroom units trying to go to larger, and I have maybe 1 or 2 single individuals that would downsize, but no one wants a 1-bedroom. They would take a 2-bedroom, but they wouldn't take a 1-bedroom. So your occupancy -1, which is 1 less than is normally required, would work, but if you want to go to a net bedroom gain, then that's fine as well.
Net bedroom gain. Try and get more, grease the wheels a little bit more.
I'm in agreement.
Okay.
Does the
See-
pilot program expire? I feel like instead of like tweaking, like is there a time to try a different program essentially, or are we just gonna?
We haven't changed it yet, so we haven't loosened it up yet.
I mean, I think you can continue to evolve
Right.
it into whatever you want it to be.
Okay, so it's just in the regulate. It's not a
Right.
pilot program anymore. It's just our program, and
Right.
we're just improving it through regulations, right?
I mean, it's called a pilot program. We put it in the regulations to protect all of us.
Okay.
On council's advice. It can be changed with a normal regulation change, which is what we're doing right now. I would say that if this change doesn't provide movement, then just like Liz did, we come back in 3 or 4 months and say, okay, it's not working. Let's go back to the drawing board and see what might work. Or most likely, the survey that we sent out where people expressed interest probably wasn't that valid. Sure, it's very easy to answer a survey that says, sorry, Liz, it's very easy to answer a survey that says, yeah, sure, I'll downsize. But when push, when you actually are like presented the opportunity. So, what?
But that many people replied and took interest in the
Sorry.
topic is.
I apologize. It was meaningful that we got response. I just don't think it was truthful in maybe what people.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. So you guys are recommending so that someone could go from a 4-bedroom to a 3-bedroom?
No, we're recommending that it has to be like if it's a single person, they could go to a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom,
Yeah.
but not a
But that's
3-bedroom.
isn't that what that currently says?
There must be a net bedroom gain from the transaction. A single person could go from a 4-bedroom to a 3-bedroom.
No, current regulation
Yeah, I
says
don't want this.
occupancy has to be met, right?
That's what you all requested last time and is what we're saying should go forward.
I don't agree. I
Is
must
it-
have been
and-
sleeping during
No,
that
no,
part
you're
of the
fine.
I don't think
chat.
you were here. I don't think you were
It was
on.
online.
Okay. And this is still in conjunction with any of the dependents in this swap being of a certain age, so we know we're not doing the whole trade and then losing bedrooms again right away. Is there still an age limit in
No,
this?
this removed the age limit.
Okay.
So where are we? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Peter said,
Down.
net bedroom. I'm supportive of net bedroom gain. Sounds like Kelly's not. Ward's shaking his head yes.
I'm
Nodding.
not voting, but I support it.
I'm nodding my head, not shaking.
Or, yeah, nodding your head.
Oh dear.
Same,
Okay.
not voting.
Okay.
All right, so let's move
We'll
forward.
bring it forward. Okay.
Wait, what just happened? So it's
Would this
it
stay the
stays
We're
the
gonna
same.
stick
Stays
with
the same.
net bedroom gain.
Okay, so the next one, Karen, if you can slide us forward one. I skipped 2 forward. That was my fault. In complex priority, this was a board requested change. In complex bidders can qualify at any category at or above their category.
Greg Postman wondered how this provided for downsizing, like a retiree situation in an in-complex.
It's separate from the right sizing program. Is that what we're?
I don't know. It could be right
It's,
sizing.
okay, so it's separate from the right sizing program. This is just if a unit in your complex comes up for sale. If you're bidding in complex, you get first priority. So right now, you have to qualify at that category or
one below.
or
One above.
one above.
Oh, yes.
Sorry.
At that if it's a category,
So
yeah.
so let's say it's category 3 unit, you have to be a category 3, or you could qualify for a category 4 if you're a category 3. But this is saying that if the unit, we don't have category 5, bad example, allowing you to bid up any number.
For
I
example,
think
if
he
you
was okay, Kelly, by the time you
No.
explained some of it to him. I thought he was comfortable.
Well, he more wants to make sure that folks who in complex want to go to a smaller unit and maybe in a lower category aren't deprioritized.
They are deprioritized.
Yeah.
His concern is
That's, yeah,
correct.
that's part of the right sizing program. It's not an in-complex priority.
Well, no, if it's that, if a retiree wants to go to a category 2 from their category
their
4, would we allow it?
Yeah.
But they earn
if they
category 4,
qualify
no.
category 2,
Yeah, if
then
they qualify
they
at
would be
category
allowed to
2.
do it.
Yeah.
I forget why we think this is a good idea for in-complex, though we don't think it's a good idea for the program as a whole.
So I think we heard from someone who was in category 4 already, and then I think in their case had additional children, which moved them down a category to category 2. So they were already in a category 4, and they wanted to, they're in a 2-bedroom, they want to move to a 3-bedroom category 4, but now they're category 2, right? And so I think that was the,
Yeah.
they're already
So
in
they
a
could only do
category
category
4.
2 or category 3. Even though, because they bought before we said that you could only bid in your category or one up. So they were probably a lower category and they
were,
got a
for sure.
category
Got
4
it.
product.
Yeah.
Well, they used to be a category 4-3 household, but they ended up having another dependent, so that kicked them down to category 2. Because of the qualification where you can only bid at that category or one, at your category or one up, they could not do the in-complex priority. This would allow them to have done that in-complex priority.
But we don't think that family should be allowed to bid on other Cat 4 3-bedrooms for some
Outside
reason.
of the complex.
Correct.
But it's the same.
I think the
I mean,
other
I
argument
think
was keeping community together.
That's right. I mean, I think you get to the point of like what's the point of in-complex then?
Well, I'm more open up categories to everyone side of that conversation, but I just forgot why,
Yeah.
and I don't have much more to say about this.
Okay. Gonna keep it as is and move forward. The next one is the addition of a sentence.
The clarification on conveyances outside the bid process.
Oh, yeah.
We-
It's just,
We skipped over that one.
yeah, can I see the memo?
Number 8.
Because I didn't do a slide, because it was, I didn't do a slide, because
So-
it was just a clarification.
It's the addition of a section to clarify changing ownership to an LLC.
LLC
is
or trust.
Is prohibited.
Memos here.
Yeah.
Notes.
Must be an individual person.
Great. I think we're all for it.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. We're good. So that one, as Carson just said, was the conveyances outside the bid process. You cannot transfer your home to a LLC or a trust.
Lovely.
Great.
And it's just a clarification. That's current regulations. This is the addition of a sentence on the prohibition of in-kind rentals. They're prohibited. So this would be if you wanted to go to South Africa for 3 weeks and someone named John who had a house in South Africa wanted to come to Aspen for 3 weeks and you traded homes. So this is a prohibition on this. Apparently, I've gotten a lot of phone calls on this lately.
Yeah, our board wants to know why.
Why have I gotten a lot of phone calls?
No, why
That'd be
would we
great.
prohibit this?
Because you have to be a qualified employee to live in that unit. If you're not a qualified employee to live in the unit, you cannot rent that unit.
It's not being rented.
Right.
Well, it's an in-kind
It's
rental.
an in-kind rental.
It's still housing somebody who's not a qualified employee.
Unlike the rest of the regulations, this seems so modern and a new issue, and I would really want public outreach. It's interesting to hear you're already getting a lot. I think there needs to be a little bit more on the comm side before deciding this just us in this room. I really don't know where I stand. I think if you're in APCHA housing, you are more likely to be seeking cheaper means of staying places when you travel, and this is one of those options. We are not housing new people in our system. How would it damage the system? How would it damage the integrity? And I think the public will have a lot to say about that. It's just such a new
That was my
option.
thought. That was exactly
great.
my thought.
I mean, some
But
of
what
the
were the phone calls that we
discussion
got?
that
What
went-
were they saying? Were they all similar?
I had 2 people ask if they could do this,
Wanting
and
to
I
do
said
it.
no, and I said, and because it's receiving rent, and that's what Tom had said last time. You're not receiving physical cash, but that's why we have in kind. It's a benefit that you're receiving, and we require, anyone else that rents a unit to be qualified by APCHA.
And the community just spoke very loudly about short-term rentals.
Right, the same thing.
Agreed.
What if it's your brother who has the house in South Africa?
Then it's not a rental.
This is this address is it's not a rental, as Peter said, and there are websites out here that make these matches.
Yeah.
So.
I'm supportive of this.
I would 100% agree.
I mean, if it's a family, I don't think it'd be a problem, Francie, if it was a
It's the family member, it doesn't
but,
matter.
But what we are talking about is these house swap websites and that
Yeah,
kind of
I agree. It's a
think
free
Patty
market perk,
and I can't remember what Greg said, but as Allison said, that we're talking about people who can't afford to go to Paris or South Africa.
Legally,
Now
it's
we're
the
making
same
it
thing,
even
yeah.
harder for them.
But I think your memory of the conversation is different. Patty agreed that this was an exchange of value on what was
She did,
publicly
but-
subsidized.
Yeah, but then I also
properties.
thought that she said, yeah, but these are people who need this kind of benefit. So,
Not to
My
make it
notes said
personal,
that
I
our
live
board supported this.
in a free market apartment, and I can't rent or exchange my unit because of short-term rental regulations. So I can't trade my unit because it's a short-term rental.
okay.
Can we leave it as is and you reach out to your board members again?
No,
and-
I feel very comfortable that our board gave us direction to
Okay.
support this today.
Great.
Except for me.
Okay. Well, we're gonna. if
It's fine. Let's just go on.
We're gonna go on. Okay. So the next one is the hearing officer, and this is a lot of text, but there's one thing that's changing in here. The thing that's changing in here is that the written decision must be done within 60 days instead of 30 days. And the reason why is that we have found from the hearings that we have held, the hearing officer does not like to issue a ruling without a written copy of the transcript to make sure that the decision is as well written as possible and includes all the necessary facts. When APCHA goes then to produce the transcript, it takes anywhere from 2 weeks to 45 days was the quote we got last week to produce a transcript. That also costs at about $4,000 or $5,000. So we are suggesting the increase from 30 days to 60 days to allow for the production of that transcript. The regulations in general don't require the transcript to be prepared until a appeal to the board. However, as I've said, the hearing officer is requesting that, and I think it's a smart move when he does require it, if both parties agree to waiting for that transcript to be produced.
Well, 60 days would be a big improvement over what we've had.
So,
Can we change the word shall to must in this regulation changes?
yes.
Hopefully it helps us avoid some of
Potentially. Let me talk to Tom,
Thank you.
because Tom reviewed all these and
That was part of the deal, wasn't it? Using must
Tom
instead of
does
shall.
want Tom does want shall. Your legal counsel is recommending strongly that shall remain in place. So,
Can we do must by 90 days then?
I can ask. I think the 60 days is nicer.
I think
Well, and I
Tom really likes the word shall rather than must. It just gives it more flexibility. In the opinions have come back much quicker. So I don't
think-
think Tom's going to budge on the shall
See,
language.
I thought shall was one of the problems.
Yeah.
100%
That-
is the flexibility is the
that
problem.
yeah,
The
exactly.
person waiting for an answer, if there's a must, and I don't care how far out that must is, they'll at least know that they get that answer. And I think that, like, the flexibility is the problem.
I don't disagree with you, but the hearing, I can understand why Tom would recommend this, because he's protecting the board's
Right.
prerogatives, which
Exactly.
is what the hearing officer is instituted to do. You know,
Right.
we are transferring board prerogative to the hearing officer on these tasks. And so the protection is set up for us, not necessarily for
client.
the appellants.
Yeah.
But I thought John Ward made the great point that like housing's important. We expect people to get their rent in on time and all
Yeah,
that. So
I
we
do
should.
totally agree with that.
And we can
I-
push
I
for that,
just
but
am
sometimes these transcripts take
seeing these.
a really long time to get.
And there's the idea that you want the best written opinion that you can possibly have, because that's what's coming
What
up.
if you had something like, the decision must be delivered, no later than 60 days after the receipt of a transcript?
Or 30 days after they get
The transcript isn't always produced. The reason that you all wrote the regs how they were written is that the individual appealing the hearing officer's decision must pay for the production of the transcripts, which is anywhere from $1,500 to probably $8,000.
Yeah.
We've paid
A lot.
a lot, up to $8,000 for I think one of these. The idea was that it was shifted to whoever was appealing the hearing officer's decision. We're keeping them written that way. When we've had multi-day hearings and complex hearings, the production of those transcripts prior to writing of that decision has been requested and has been agreed to as a very smart
Yeah.
right reasoning. I can work with Tom a little bit. He's listening on maybe some looking at this a little bit. I can't.
He was shaking his head yes for the shall.
I think Kelly makes a really good point. We're hoping to protect the appellant. That was the problem the last time around was, oh, come on, this has been way too long. And it really screwed up the whole process by having it be so long. And so, but Tom is trying to protect APCHA.
Yeah.
So, and I think the word shall is the legal term that Tom chooses to protect APCHA. So I think we should go with that.
Which is a separate conversation from the hearing officer or time when the hearing officer should turn it around. And we've had much better success with
Right.
swift returns of the judgments
Yeah.
than we
Yeah.
did over the summer.
Right.
Due to
Yeah,
less
I mean, I'm
complicated
supportive
cases.
of keeping it as written.
Great. Okay, and so the next slide, which is the last slide, is the same thing. I'm just showing it to you again, which is because it appears in a different spot. It's the change of the 30 days to 60 days. It's so.
Our hearing officer insists on getting a transcript before he makes his decision and charging that to the appellant.
No, APCHA's been covering that
APCHA's
cost,
been covering
which
it.
is not necessarily how the
Ideal.
regulations are written, and we
Yeah.
have not done a cost sharing at this point in time. We have
Pretty
covered
soon
it.
that will be taken over by AI and we won't have to worry so much about it.
Ideally.
And again, it's been with the understanding of both parties that those transcripts will be produced prior to a decision being made due to the complexity of that case.
Somebody like to make a motion on page 15?
Sorry, I have to go. I'm transferring my duties to Francine.
I'll make a motion. I recommend to approve resolution number 08, series of 2023,
Nancy,
adopting
do that
amendments.
if Kelly's still here?
She just
Okay.
conceded. to
Sorry,
me.
that's fine. I'm sorry.
Adopting amendments to the Aspen Pitkin employee housing regulations at first reading and schedule public hearing for final approval on December 13th, 2023.
I'll second.
Who's second? Carson?
Second from Ward.
Oh, for Ward.
Sorry.
So roll call. Ward,
Discussion at all on that?
Yes.
Carson?
Real quick discussion on,
Oh, sorry.
Two discussion points. One, I think to to officially move these in, they might have to be peeled. Like, I think there's some that we could lump approve and some that I feel that I'm gonna have to say no if they're not individually considered or, depending on what comes back during second. And I guess is it just uniform? Are we not gonna do any public outreach, or I guess I can try personally, but I would love to know what public comment on the housing swap stuff, like what those reactions are. I don't know what anyone's saying about it from within the system, and so I think that one in particular I would love more outreach on than just passing it next time we get together.
Okay.
That's all.
We don't have time to do that, and we don't plan on doing that, just to let you know. These are out there. They're on our website. The next meeting is a public hearing. Anybody can come and provide public hearing, because we have to open it up to public hearing. They're always out there. People can always know. We have them on our website.
We're on TV.
Can we talk to Carolyn or someone about posting an ad or posting?
I mean, it's noticed, yeah. The meeting's noticed.
I can use communications around this.
Cool.
Sans of, communications plan, that's yet to be formed, but just like every other business partner, I'm just kind of ad hoc here.
We don't have a lot of public hearings throughout the year, and APCHA, I think an ad in the paper, at least just saying that the next meeting is a public hearing, is helpful.
Yeah, maybe get some media coverage, reviews and social media.
Thank you.
But it is publicly noticed on the website.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And I have to actually physically do a public notice as well.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second, and it's a roll call vote.
Okay. So I did Ward. Yes.
Yes.
Carson.
Yes.
That already voted.
Francie.
Yes.
Allison.
No.
Peter.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes, and no further items on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
There certainly is.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Okay, then I'll go the other way. Peter.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
Francie.
Yes.
Carson.
Yes.
And Ward.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned, 7:02.
Just go out, you can't get back in.